Welcome to the Tuning In podcast, where we talk alignment, intuition, and our internal guidance system. We cover woo-woo topics in an approachable and practical way. I'm your host, Dana Evans of Alignful.com. Hello. Oh my gosh. Welcome to another episode of the Tuning In podcast. We're at episode 108, and it's February 1st that I'm recording this, which is actually the Lunar New Year, and it is the first episode of 2022, so I took quite a break. So with that, a lot's shifted internally for me in the last couple of months, and so I'm declaring this a new season of the Tuning In podcast. And so it is season 4, and we are on episode 108, which is actually kind of cool. I thought it was 109, but 108 is a cool number. I'm gonna look it up. Yeah, it's a sacred number. Like, I know when people are doing sun salutations in yoga, they often do 108 of them. I think 108 is what's on like a mala necklace or prayer beads. I don't know. Those are my thinkings. Don't quote me on any of that, but if you're curious, look up 108. So it feels fitting to start that off as a new season. So with that, I just wanted to start with a shorter episode, just a little recap of what happened and what we're doing here now. Same great content, same great host. I just feel like whenever I go through an internal shift, I feel like it's always a time to make a new season out of the podcast, just to reflect that I myself am in a new season. So that's kind of where all that is coming from. So I was guided, which I've talked about a lot on the podcast, to take December off from coaching, from Voxer, and do as little as possible. And I would say I didn't fully get to do that. I did, like, the first week of December was like a phase out week for client calls. And then the second week, I was still doing some Voxer support and some checking in and doing all that. So it wasn't until probably the third week of December, like the week of the 13th, probably more closer to like the 16th, but that I really was like, okay, I'm off Voxer, I'm not doing coaching, and I'm just kind of being in life and doing the bare minimum other things like that are on my plate that I do regularly, but very minimal overall. And it was a cool experience. And apparently it wasn't quite fully enough. So I'll talk about that in a minute of what's unfolded in January. Oh my God. If there were ever like a neon sign with arrows that are saying, slow down, it's like totally what January was for me. So yeah, December was nice, and I definitely was able to slow down quite a bit and do just a little reflection and integration. You know, it was funny. I held a workshop, and that workshop had come to me because I saw all these people being like, plan for the new year, goal setting, time for the new year. And I'm like, oh my God, like I am so not ready for the new year. I haven't processed this year, let alone 2020. Like I need space. And so I hosted a workshop called Release and Return to Self, where it was a clearing workshop, like a processing workshop, a being in the now, like what's present with your body workshop. Like we can't dive into something new if we haven't made peace with and cleared and released and shed the old. So that was really wonderful. And I hosted that in Buena Vista, which was really special. That's a place that I love going. So I was there. So it was really good energy. And then, you know, that was, of course, a nudge for me too of releasing and processing. And so we had a really uneventful, well, that's not totally true. We had a couple really crazy things happened when my brother and Daniela, they visited on two ends of a trip to another trip that they were doing. So they had like a layover, and the first layover was, oh my God, I might tell this as a whole podcast episode, but we basically got caught up in like a phone scam, and we totally got scammed, the three of us. Three very smart, educated people. I mean, that's like a whole podcast. If you want to hear that story, you let me know. That was, oh my God. And it was actually kind of traumatic. I had to do some clearing around that myself. And then on the other end of their visit, so that was like the 23rd, and then they came back on the 30th, and we were going down to celebrate like Christmas to my parents' house and to have a great dinner. And that night was, these fires broke out in Colorado, right? Very, very close to my home. And so we were down by my parents in the fire. They were doing like pre-evacuation alerts with the neighborhood that was like 5 miles from us. And we're like, oh my God. So I threw a total tantrum, by the way. I was so pissed that I had to leave. But John and I left. I like cried the whole way back to our house because I just wanted to spend time with my family and Ian and Daniela. And like the other trip had been so stressful. Oh my gosh. But it was fine. So we went home just in case, to be with the cat, pack up a few things, but everything was fine for us. It was a devastating, though, experience. These neighborhood fires, I mean, they took out, I think, like 700 structures in a day. Like, they broke out that morning of the 30th, and by like 7 p.m., they had done so much destruction. I mean, it's so sad and terrifying because we're used to like forest fires here in Colorado. Definitely we're used to forest fires and the devastation that comes with that. But these fires, they were grass fires, and they ripped through neighborhoods, which, oh my God, it's like a whole nother story. So, and then the next day was New Year's Eve, and we got this crazy snowstorm, like total, like everything. I think that's the dates. Maybe it was, the 31st. A crazy snowstorm broke out, which is even more sad because all the people whose homes had burned, then it put the fire out, right, in some ways, but it snowed on everything. Oh my God. It was like, God, we couldn't just end. Like, we really needed, apparently, to just end with a bang. So that was the end of December. So it was like kind of chill, but also kind of stressful. And then we move into January, and that first week of January, I was pretty full. Like, it was like, bam, everything's back. You're back on Voxer. And the reason I had taken off from Voxer, this is like a digital app, and a lot of coaches use it for in between session support. And what I realized is, and this was part of why my inner voice had guided me to take December off from all of it, was like, I had been nonstop available to people basically all of last year. Like, I'm going to do Voxer, even though I had received inner guidance that was not right for me and my business. I did it anyway. And I was just available and like on Voxer all the time, coaching people, all the time on coaching calls. And I'm like, I need a break from all this. Like, I need to stop putting everything outward. So that's what December was for. Well, then come January, it's like we come right back in. I have a busy week. And then I had on the 11th, I went to Sedona for a full week to a coach's retreat that was with James Wedmore, who runs Business by Design, who I've been through his program. I'm a coach for him within his program. And he had us coaches out there for a retreat, which was awesome. And we decided to stay for a full week, 4 of us, or 5 of us. And so we rented a beautiful home, one of James's properties, actually. And we had this like amazing week in Sedona. But like the day I got there, I was like allergic to the house. Like, I was sneezing, my nose was running, like the air vents were driving me nuts. So like that whole week, it was really fun. Okay. But I was in a house with 4 other, 2 manifesting generators and 1 generator. There had been some drama with like Kimi getting there. And I was like, Kimi has to be there. Like, we were sharing a room. And so like she wasn't there, and then she got there. And then like I hadn't slept well the first night, like we were up till like 2 a.m. or something crazy. Meanwhile, like the week leading up to that, I'd been sleeping like 9 solid hours every single night. And then I'd get there and it was like, my sleep is totally interrupted. I'm with all these energy people, right? So I'm a non-sacral, right? So I have an open, undefined sacral center as a projector. And I'm with these like intense, defined energy people who have so much fucking energy. Excuse my language. And then I'm underslept. I'm in this house that is like, feels kind of allergizing to me, having trouble sleeping and going nonstop. So that was like literally a whole week and it was very hard for me. Then on the 17th, Kimi and I went on this amazing hike with Josh from James's team, who's like such an amazing hike guide. And I wanted, like, we had done a group hike with everyone that was like a mile and a half. It was gorgeous. We went to Cathedral Rock. We got all these gorgeous videos and photos, and it was like so beautiful. But I was like, I want like a hard hike. Like, I'm used to hiking 13ers and in Colorado, right? So like, give me something that's going to like push me. And Josh was the person. So Kimi and I did that hike with him on the 17th. And it was so much fun, but like, oh my God, we got really worn out. And then the 18th, y'all, that was the day we were flying home. Kimi and I had a horrible night's sleep. Both of us had a horrible night's sleep. We had like some haunting in our room too. I mean, that was a little terrifying the night before. Like all these weird things were happening. I'm like, we were like saged the heck out of the room, but we still didn't sleep well. Got up at 4 a.m. to drive 2 hours in our Tesla. I rented a Tesla and I felt like such a badass all week. I was driving I was like in charge of driving everyone everywhere because we all wanted to drive the Tesla. So like that was like me manifesting my future car, right? And then so Kimi and I get in the Tesla, drive 2 hours to Phoenix, and I'm like, oh my God, my whole body hurts. I'm exhausted. I'm worn down. I'm so tired. Like all I could think of all because like I'm so tired. And so this was only 2 weeks ago, right? We were coming home. And then like I get on this flight and I find out that they canceled and rebooked me without me really realizing. And my flight, like I was flying to like Albuquerque but we didn't change planes. I'm like, whatever. I can't. I'm sitting on the plane like cold. So at this point, I'm not at all aware of what's happening, but I was cold and I have my hood on and I'm just like in the window and I'm just like, I just need to get home. And I was literally there like visualizing each step of the trip. I'm like, okay, we're going to land in Albuquerque. I don't have to change planes. I'm not going to change seats. Like I can just sit here and then we'll take off from Albuquerque and then we're going to land in Denver. Then I'm going to get off the plane and then I'm going to go get my bags. They're going to be ready early. And then my parents are going to pick me up and then they're going to take me and I'm going to pick up soup so that John and I have dinner. And then they're going to take me home and I'm going to get home and I'm going to take a shower. And then after the shower, I'm going to eat my soup and I'm going to get into bed. Like I was visualizing that. Like that was all that got me. That was one of the hardest travel days I've ever had. Like I was not hungover. I was in so much pain. My body was aching and it was hot and cold. Well, right. So all those steps happened. I get home and eat my soup and I was like, John, I have to shower and go to bed. I crawled into bed at like 2:30 that day. I slept from 2:45-ish p.m. in the afternoon until 6:30 in the morning the next day, which was almost 16 hours, which I've never in my life, to my recollection, have slept that long. And the next day was Wednesday. And that was like the hardest day for me. I sweat all night. I like couldn't watch any shows. I was just like laying in bed. I'm like, oh my God, I'm sick. I had like fever, not much. It was like 99. It wasn't much of a fever, but I was like hot and then I was cold and I was just laying. I just like couldn't do it. I just was like laying in bed and sleeping on and off all day. And then like I had a big sweat and I think my fever broke then, which was great. Went to bed, woke up feeling a bit better the next day. I had 2 coaching calls. So I was like, I'm just going to get through these. I can't move them, but because I was feeling a little bit better. Went back to sleep. The next day felt worse, like horrible sore throat. Like it felt like I just had like glass in my throat, like I couldn't swallow. And that was for 2 days. And then I had like a little cough on like Sunday, and I was just so tired. Like, oh my God. Sunday, Monday, like, so then that whole next week, I was definitely better. I did, again, some coaching calls. I was just exhausted, and I was sleeping 12 hours every single night. Like, yeah, it's 12 hours every single night and laying down in bed in between working things. Like, it was crazy. And then that was last week. And here I am. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm still, you can probably hear the congestion in my voice, right? It's still a little scratchy. My head's still a little congested. I'm not as tired. I started feeling like better on Saturday and then a lot better on Sunday. So, almost 2 full weeks of being sick after this trip to Sedona. But the funny thing about all of this, why, it's like, okay, I'm just updating you. So if you're listening still, thank you. And I felt like this was an important, like, here's how I transitioned into the year. Okay. But, I wasn't working almost at all. Like, so January started, I had 1 week. The first week was like a bit busy. And then I had all these appointments, right? I was like, got my eyebrows tinted and waxed, my eyelashes tinted, my legs waxed, like manicure, pedicure, whatever, to get ready for this trip. But then, I basically was off. So I wasn't working on the Sedona trip. I had 1 coaching call, but I had planned, right, to not be working that week, which was so awesome. And then I get back from that trip and it was like, boom, out of commission. Like, you're not, because it was hard for me to feel ill because all the other people who had been on the trip, like, I'm watching their Instagram, they're like, oh, I have all these ideas, I'm implementing all this stuff, they're putting out all this content. I'm like, oh my God, everyone's doing, they're generators and manifesting generators. And I'm here like being, I can't even do anything except just lay down. And what I came to realize, and this is really the point of everything, is I'm like, man, like I am being asked this January is like, it is not a go month for me. And it never has felt that way. It's like this month is for integrating and processing still from last year and shedding. So my inner voice, I was like, why am I sick after this trip? Inner voice, like, I loved these people. It was such amazing energy, such a beautiful place, like Sedona and the vortex. Like, a lot of people do get kind of sick when they're there because of the energy. It's like 5D energy, all these things. But I'm like, why am I sick, inner voice, now? And my inner voice said, let's see, even this sickness was for you to slow down. I'm reading what my inner voice, when I was writing to it. Even this sickness was for you to slow down, really to shed the thoughts and ideas and energies of all those around you, for they would have taken over and informed you more than us. So we gave you the opportunity to shed, rest, and restore. Come back to us, back to you, back to your knowing that this is all perfect. Speeding up can come naturally, but know that we will guide that. Speeding up from the mind simply creates urgency, fear, doubt, and is operating from a place of not enough, lack, and pushing. And then it said, yes, this is not the same level of pushing that you see in others. Because my mind's like, I'm hardly doing anything. Like, how come I need to rest more? But this is not the same level of pushing that you see in others. And we know you understand and see the nuances of it all. We want you to see yourself in the bigger picture, to see your place. So what this brought everything back to, which I think has been so interesting, and this had come through another inner voice session with one of my clients. Her inner voice had guided her to stop drinking caffeine and alcohol starting, this year. Mostly. It's not, the inner voice is rarely like a hard line, but it was like, no, we want her to stop, but she can occasionally have it. And I said, well, why occasionally, inner voice? Because you're stressing the mind out. And her inner voice said, we're changing the defaults. So instead of by default having caffeine, by default having alcohol, now it's like you don't have those. By default, you're not having caffeine. By default, you're not having alcohol, and occasionally you do. I was like, oh, that's so interesting. And that's what I was feeling with what happened in January. It was like, and even December, it was like, slow down, like pump the brakes. And even when you think you've pumped the brakes enough, we say it's time to pump the brakes more and to keep slowing down, to keep pausing, to keep becoming molasses. I'm like, I'm morphing into a cat. And what became really clear during this being sick was that my inner voice is helping me shift my default to a true default of a slower pace, no anxiety, no projecting and fear of the doing of what's next, of what if, of just being present in my body. That's all I was really able to do the past 2 weeks and even the past month. And it's like, if I'm teaching this and I'm working with people to help them, it's like so much of the work I do, it's like I'm working with entrepreneurs who have created a certain amount of success in their business. And then the mind is petrified of losing that success, but they're also not satisfied and fulfilled or even truly feeling the success because the mind is so active. And so they want to start leading and living from this inner voice, but the mind doesn't trust what it means, right? Because the inner voice will often have you slow down first because we need to reset. And so it's like I'm being asked to slow down so much so that I can be like, which is what I've set out for. I'm like, I want to be an example of someone who can create a thriving, successful, abundant business without having first hustled and pushed my way there. Because the people I'm working with have hustled and pushed their way there, and now they're trying to scale back. A lot of people are doing that right now. If you need support with that, I'm here for you. But my whole goal is like, I don't want to do the hustle route at all. What if everything is guided from my inner voice? And that's, of course, what I've done the past year. And now it's like, okay, you thought you were slowed down. Let me slow you down even more so you see. And just yesterday I was journaling and I was like, oh my God, I haven't had those pangs of anxiety in my body. Like I'm so used to, I would never have considered myself like an anxious person. Like that's not how I see myself, but I'm definitely used to having like the Sunday scaries and like those like feelings of like, oh my God, what have I forgotten? And on one of the first days of, I think it was last week, like the 24th, that Monday, I like woke up and I was like, I had nothing on my schedule. I literally was just planning to rest all day because I had 3 client calls the next day, and I was still sick. And I had that panic of dread of something's bad. I've forgotten something. I've missed something. Something bad's happened. And I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't had that feeling in almost 2 months. And so it was like the die-off, and if you do like a parasite cleanse, the die-off of the parasites like can make you feel sick even though you're getting better. And that's kind of what I felt like. It was like this last like panic. And I'm really, truly experiencing an extended period of time where I feel at ease, where I feel okay, where my mind isn't projecting of what might be wrong in the future, where I'm just living in the present and allowing life to unfold and to be guided moment to moment by my inner voice as to what's the next best step. And right now, it just keeps coming back to me. It's like, we're still in slow mode. Like, it is not time for you to activate. You work with your clients and we're not creating beyond that. Not yet, not right now. So it's really inspiring and it's been such an interesting journey. And so my default is shifting. And I'm curious, like, what defaults do you find yourself operating in? And where would you like to shift that, right? Are there places where you feel like, oh my God, this is just my MO. And what would it be like to shift it so it's a different MO? I don't know. It's possible. And with that, I have some fun things coming up. I have a great podcast episode that I'll be doing with Elizabeth Ralph, the spiritual investor. She is it's such an honor to talk to her. She has such a beautiful understanding of wealth and money and such a spiritual relationship with it. So she's coming on the podcast in a couple of weeks, I think the 16th. And I don't know, I'm really excited about that. And then I have decided to open up two new openings for one-to-one work. So if you're interested in shedding any buildup, emotional crap, and really resetting to a new default for yourself, one of more ease, one of more trust, one of more presence and enjoyment in life, this is your calling. And if you know, right, if you feel that inner nudge of like, this is what we're looking for, right? It's beyond coaching, right? Because I'm bringing you into your inner voice. We shed like a mother, like yawning, tears, breathing, like so much energetic shedding that you didn't even know you were holding on to, which is necessary to create space for whatever new that you want to invite in. So it's what we do together in a very, very simple description. If you want to know more, shoot me an email to Dana at alignful.com. And I'll probably be onboarding people end of February and March. So not in the next 2 weeks, but probably end of February, first week of March is when you and I could start working together. So run it through your authority, ask your inner voice, and shoot me an email if you want to book a little chat to understand more if this is right for you, if this is a good match for both of us, really, because I only work with about 4 to 5 people at a time. So I'm very, very, very careful with who I bring in because we go deep, we go far, and we are in it together. So with that, I am so happy to be back on the Tuning In podcast after a much needed break. And I'm looking forward to all that this new season has in store for both of us. If there's anything you want me to talk about, anything that you have questions about, you can always ask that to me on Instagram at Dana_Evans. You can shoot me a DM or you can email me. So with that, happy Lunar New Year. The Human Design New Year, we're in the age of Aquarius now, started on the 22nd of January. February 1st was the Lunar New Year. So if you haven't felt like diving into 2022 yet, it's totally understandable, and trust that that nudge, that spark, that inspiration will make its way to you when it's divinely timed. So with that, thank you as always for tuning in, and I'll catch you next week. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Tuning In podcast. As always, if this would resonate with anyone you know, please share the episode. You can follow along with my journey on Instagram at Dana_Evans, or find me on my website at alignful.com.